Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we are taking a look at the roster for the Shanghai Dragons. Dragons finished the 2022 season with an 18-6 record, plus 27 differential. They were second overall in the Eastern region. Of course, 2021, this team was the Overwatch League champions. They did manage to win a tournament last year, winning the Summer Showdown in the APAC region in the Jotes meta, but that was really it for their successes last season. Now, going into 2023, they have put together one of the rosters in Overwatch League history. That is certainly what we are looking at. It is one of the Overwatch League rosters of all time. So, let's take a look at their roster and talk about who they have on their team for 2023. You can see it here on your screen. They have Fleta returning, though he has moved over to the tank role. They have Viper and Hisu as their DPS, and they have Gangnam Jin, DM, and Bebe as their supports. 3 players returning to this team from various points in their history with Fleta, DM, and Bebe. A bunch of new pieces as well. So let's jump in and let's talk about this roster. And we're going to start with what I think is the most logical part of this roster, the part that I think is the most, just general, the least amount of confusion, and that is the DPS for this roster with Viper and Hisu. Now, one of the things I am curious about is the potential of some weird role swappy stuff, and I'll talk about it a little bit more when we move on to the supports, but for their damage duo, they have Viper. They have Hisu. Viper is going to be their flex DPS player. So, expect him to play stuff like Genji, Mei, Echo, Pharah, Hanzo, I assume, stuff like that. Those are going to be Viper's hero pool. He comes over from O2 Blast, very, very successful team, of course. Lots of really good players from that O2 Blast roster. So it is a little bit difficult to say for sure kind of what your best kind of pieces are. But you look just in general, a lot of players from that team went to the league. Bliss, Prophet, Babel, Junbin. Of course, you have Heesang and Max. You had some guys last year as well. So lots of people from that roster ending up here in the Overwatch League. And Viper, somewhat of a more limited kind of playtime from my understanding. Of course, he was on the team for about 2 years before he left, a little over 2 years. So he would have played around, the same time that Proper was there. So definitely someone who has shown some talent, but I don't know exactly kind of the heights that Viper is going to reach on this roster. APAC region's a weird region this year, so he definitely is in decent position for that reason, but it's an interesting kind of thing to pair with Hisu, who has been very, very good during his time in the Overwatch League. I have been a big fan of Hisu, especially on Toronto. He was the best part for 2 years, essentially, of that Toronto Defiant roster. Hit scan player predominantly, also a very good Sombra, but very good Widow, very good Cassidy, very good Ashe, good Sojourn. So I feel very, very good about Hisu joining this roster. I do like what he brings to the team. There were some rumors of Hisu joining the Shock at one point in the season. Clearly that didn't happen. He's here with the Dragons. It's a pretty good DPS duo, all things considered. I don't think it's quite as good as what you have with the Seoul Dynasty or with the Dallas Fuel, who we've already talked about as teams in this region. But I do think, generally speaking, it is a good one, and there's quite a lot to kind of make of this duo, who I think, all things considered, look better than a lot of the other parts on this roster in particular. So I don't really have a lot of complaints with Viper Hisu. I'll be curious to kind of see the flexibility they have. I don't really think they'll be a great duo if double hit scan metas come up, but that's where I wonder if we see some potential flexibility in the support lineup, because this team has on their roster 3 supports: Gangnam Jin, Bebe, and DM. Gangnam Jin most likely is going to be the main support for this team. He played a lot of Lucio for New York last year. I thought he was an awful Lucio. Not even gonna try to sugarcoat it. I thought he was the worst Lucio in the league last year. So not something that I'm particularly happy with. If he is the only option they have in that main support role, and I would expect him to go main support more than DM, who he's historically a DPS player. So I think he most likely will be the flex support, because that's what we usually see with stuff like Teru and Babel. When they made the move over, they became flex supports. Kind of frag-heavy, frag-focused flex support players. So it's interesting that this is kind of who they have. And then, of course, they have Bebe, who is in a more coach-player role for the team. So I think predominantly his role will be coaching. But I wonder if we reach a point in the season where there's a double hit scan meta, does DM transition over to playing some hit scan alongside Hisu to free up Viper to not be doing that? And do we see Bebe get some scrim time and get into some games as a flex support alongside Gangnam Jin? I don't know, right? This is a really weird support line. I honestly do not feel great about it, because realistically your starters are two flex supports, one of whom is going to be playing main support and did not play it well last year, one of whom is a damage player who we haven't seen play flex support in any capacity in competition, because obviously he was with the Dragons in 2019 and 2020 and 2021. He retired during the 2021 season, about halfway through the season, and then he hasn't played Overwatch professionally since then. So we haven't seen him play flex support in the Overwatch League or in contenders or anything like that. It's not like Babel or Teru, who we saw make that transition beforehand. We haven't seen DM play it, so I don't even know what to expect from DM on flex support. But I think there is potential. It's Moon. Moon does weird stuff sometimes. He's done weird things in the past. I think there is potential for some flexibility on this roster. I think Bebe being there as a player and a coach is a good thing, because he can kind of help coach up DM as a flex support, but also in the event that you need another hit scan player, if you feel like your best chance at winning in a certain meta is to move DM over to play some hit scan DPS for a little bit, you have Bebe there as kind of another option potentially. So it's weird. This roster is so bizarre, and the support line in particular is so bizarre, and we haven't even gotten to tank yet. I don't know what to make of this. Moon is on his magic mushrooms. He is doing certainly something as the coach of this roster. Obviously, there's a lot of reasons why there are things to be concerned about with this team when you consider the fact that the parent organization has a terrible relationship with Blizzard now. It makes sense why they would probably be not as high on the Overwatch League going into this season. But it's a weird situation with the supports. I don't really have any expectations for them. I think they look pretty questionable. I don't want to say bad, because like I said, I don't know what to expect out of DM. And Gangnam Jin could definitely improve on his Lucio from last year. We saw Violet improve from 2021 to 2022. He was a significantly better Lucio in 2022 than he was in 2021. And Gangnam Jin was on a weird roster last year on New York. I don't think that roster worked. I think Gangnam Jin was part of the reason why that roster didn't work, because he was off-rolling a lot. And he's going to be off-rolling again here, and you have a lot of off-rolling as well on this team. So it's weird. It's strange. This roster really just doesn't make sense in a lot of ways. But, things are that way that they are sometimes. So we'll kind of see what happens. Let's start with the tanks now, which is just one, and it is Fleta, the wonderful, wonderful MVP from 2020, and the former damage dealer now moving over to tank. We've seen other damage players move over to tank in the past, of course. We saw the move, of course, from Dante last year. We've seen Mirror move from DPS to tank. We saw Hydration back in the day move over from DPS to tank. Generally speaking, we saw Checkmate do it too. Generally speaking, it doesn't work. Generally speaking, most damage dealers don't move over and find incredible success on the tank roll. Dante and Mirror are probably the best examples of successful moves, but even they, I would argue, are not elite level tank players. Dante is good. I still have a lot of personal concerns about Dante. I think there's certain techs that I don't necessarily feel super confident in. But tank is such a weird role now. And Fleta, obviously, because of GOATs, a lot of damage players have experience playing tank, whether it be Zarya, especially Zarya. But, there was Zarya. I mean, there's been DPS players that have played stuff like Junker Queen in the past. I mean, Fleta is an interesting player because he's very, very good. And we've seen him play a lot of different things in the league. He's super flexible, and so he's someone who I have a pretty good feeling can kind of pick up a lot of things. Now, an entirely new role is a different situation. How will Fleta be when it comes to the techs on Winston, right? How is his primal tech going to be? What's he going to look like on a Wrecking Ball? How's his Rhine going to look? How's his Diva going to look? Stuff like that. There are definitely concerns about him as a tank player, but I could see this team essentially just saying we are very limited what we can play. We have certain things that I feel like Fleta is going to be very, very good at. And I could see this team just playing into what I think they can just view as their strengths. This could be a team that says we're going to go double flex support. We're going to go on a Genji all the time or something like that. And Tracer or Sombra or whatever with Hisu. And we're going to play Fleta on Zarya or we're going to put Fleta on Junker Queen or whatever. We're going to run weird stuff that we feel the most comfortable on as a team. And we're just going to try to run it down and do our best with what we have. Because this is a bizarre roster. I don't even know what to make of this roster. How am I supposed to have an opinion on this team other than just confusion, right? It is a weird roster. It is a confusing roster. There are a lot of things to look at with this roster that maybe works, probably doesn't work. But it's the APAC region, and the APAC region right now is just odd. And there's not a lot of great teams in this APAC region right now. There's not a lot of depth in the APAC region right now, right? Like I said last week with the Seoul Dynasty, the Seoul Dynasty have one tank on their roster right now. The Dallas Fuel have one tank on their roster right now. The Hangzhou Spark are the only team right now that has two tanks on their roster in the APAC region. We don't even know what Chengdu's team is. Guangzhou, we have at least an assumption that they're going to have a lot of the same roster they had last year. If that's the case, they have one tank and Piggy, right? So there is not a ton of flexibility. There's not a ton of depth across the region right now. So I really think you can probably get away more than ever with just kind of finding something that you're good at and running that. Because I think, generally speaking, a lot of the teams in the East, because they're going to be going up against contenders teams as well, I think a lot of them are just going to kind of try to build metas and compositions around what they're good at and what they're comfortable on and just do it that way because I think, generally speaking, a lot of teams in this region just don't have the depth to be meta-resistant or meta-proof. So they're just going to play what they're good at. And I think we're going to see a lot of weird stylistic differences in the APAC region. We're going to see a lot of unique things in the APAC region. It is not going to be similar in any capacity to the Western region, where all the money was spent. A lot of the star players are currently out west or in the Western region, right? Obviously, you have your guys on Dallas, your Hanbins, your Sparkles, your Edisons, you got Prophet on Seoul, OG Prophet, you got Void, you got some of your guys on Philly, whatever. There's a lot of teams that do still have some kind of stars in this Eastern region, but a lot of it is very, very, very much kind of your middle of the pack to kind of lower end guys. So Shanghai could be competitive in this region. If they make international tournaments, I do not think this team will do anything. I think they will be pretty bad internationally, but they do have talent on this roster at the very least. It's weird. They're spread in different spots. I don't think this roster, generally speaking, is well built, but they have talent. They have a coach that I'm faithful in. And so at the end of the day, we'll see what happens with this roster. With how much uncertainty is in the Eastern region, really there's no way to really tell what this roster is going to be capable of. So We'll see what happens. It's a weird just response to this roster, but that's kind of my thoughts on it, right? And most people look at this roster and go, I mean, yeah, like they have 6 players. They're not going to add anybody else. This team is probably not going to be all that great, but they certainly could surprise us with how they play because we just don't know what to expect out of half the team, really, right? I don't know what DM's going to look like on flex support. I don't know what Fleda's going to look like on tank. I don't know if Gangnam Jim's going to look any better this year than he did on main support last year. Who knows? Lots of questions, lots of just up in the air things. So for now, that's really all I can say on this team. But let me know your thoughts on this Shanghai Dragons roster in the comments down below. Do you think this team is going to be decent? Do you think this team is a mess? Whatever. I don't really know what else you could think on it. But let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you all. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and want more like it in the future, consider liking and subscribing as your support does help out a bunch with the channel. But that is going to be all from me for today. Thank you all so much once again. I hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.